Hey guys, welcome to BP, the Bible Perspective. I have been looking forward to a debate between two Christian thinkers, okay, and who are really on the opposite spectrum of the social platform. So one is a progressive and the other is a conservative. So to understand this, to me, the nature of this debate, now this particular video that I'm going to showcase here is a debate on critical race theory and social justice. Okay. Now, in order to understand that, let me give you a little background, because what is progressive Christianity and then what is conservative Christianity? Progressive Christianity basically uses certain scriptures as a platform to push certain social issues of life: criminal reform, justice, racism, but even deeper, or more historically, caring for the poor. Those social issues that care for the poor, care for widows. This is their platform. It's probably better represented with the ideology of what's called liberation theology, and in black liberation theology. Conservatism, or conservative Christian, I would say, is probably the more dominant and more influential among Christians, and because they hold to what they call conservative principles and values that the Bible teaches. So the 10 Commandments, the family unit, okay? Now, the marriage, the traditional marriage or Christian marriage. So they would hold to those kinds of values, and then also government as it is a godly government, which of course they believe America is that conservative government. And so, again, there are a lot of social ramifications for these ideologies, okay? So if I say strong values, obviously, then I'm going to say you're going to argue against things like gay marriage and things like that, which they would say is decidedly biblical. Now, of course, this is the Bible perspective. So, yeah, by nature, I would fall more into the conservative camp. However, I do not identify as a conservative or a progressive. Let me also say that in the Bible there is also a group of people that this also kind of represent this kind of divide. They were called the Pharisees and the Sadducees, believe it or not. The Pharisees were the conservative of the day, and the Sadducees were the progressive. Now, the Sadducees you don't hear too much about, but they were the larger of the group within the Jewish leadership under the Roman Empire. In other words, keep this in mind, it was the Romans that put them in power. The Sadducees didn't believe in the resurrection, they didn't believe in angels, they didn't believe in the Spirit, and that's amazing, but they did believe in the law of Moses. When I see those kind of ideologies, I'll often ask them, what the heck why do you even call yourself a Sadducee in the first place? But the Pharisees were, even though they were small in number, they had the greater authority or power and influence, but they were the more conservatives. Of course, they were incredible hypocrites, as we see. They were the ones that pushed and even got the conviction and execution of Jesus. But they did believe in the very strict adherence to the law of Moses, although they were hypocritical and did not strictly adhere to the law of Moses. So we see this comparison today. Conservative Christians would claim to be more adhered to the Bible, yet they are very exceedingly hypocritical. And we see this with the last administration, the 4 years of the last administration. So that's kind of why this ideology here is, I think, is an important one. I would also say this, that just like politics, progressive / liberals and conservative / Republicans are just opposite sides of the same political coin. And I'll say the same, that progressive Christianity and conservative Christianity, they're just opposite sides of the same religious coin. And I know that they would take they would object to that, identification. Now, also, look here, before we get into it, please like and share this video and subscribe to BP, The Bible Perspective. As always, if you have a thought or comment, add it to the comment section below. All comments are welcome. Now, this debate between Dr. Rashad Richey and Dr. Voddie Baucham, it kind of surprised me. I'll get to that in a moment, but it happened on the Dr. Rashad Richey show, which you can see, which he is a frequent commentator on the Young Turks show. He also had the radio show in Atlanta. He is credentialed up the Yahoo. Both men are, which makes this a very good debate. When he comes with the receipts, as they say, the facts. Okay, but he would be he is a progressive Christian. I'm not here to so much get into or even judge the merits of it yet. In other words, I do have an opinion on progressive Christianity. Most of progressive Christianity, in my opinion, are not Christians. I'm not here to even explore that. But Dr. Richey would fall into that camp. And so he certainly is in opposition to certain traditional values. I would say even biblical values. But again, that's not why I am here. He invited Dr. Voddie Baucham. Now, to understand Dr. Voddie Baucham is an ultra-conservative. He is a Reform or Calvinist out of this Southern Baptist church. And that's important to understand because of late, and probably this is why it got the attention of Dr. Richey. It's because for the last several years, Dr. Baucham has been speaking strongly against anti-racist sentiment, social justice, Black Lives Matter, and now critical race theory. You should note that Dr. Voddie Baucham's audience is primarily white audience. I did criticize him because I would say that when I would hear some of his presentations, that I would, my criticism was he never goes and speaks at black audience. Well, I had to, of course, somewhat scrub that because he is appearing on the Dr. Richey show. And I'm going to tell you right off that if I had to call the debate between the two men, I'm going to give the debate to Dr. Baucham. As you will see, he holds his own. So I'm going to play the video, and then I will just kind of make some comments as we go along. So here it is.
Ladies and gentlemen, my next guest is actually no stranger in Christian evangelical circles, has a significant following. His name is Dr. Voddie Baucham, Dean of Theology, has an extensive educational background, including postgraduate study at the University of Oxford, England. Doc, thank you for being on the program. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate your time. You're kind of a mixed bag to me. You may not be a mixed bag to yourself, but you are in a circle.
I'm a mixed bag to most people.
Yeah, you are. You're in a circle of Christian evangelicals, but you also said some things that were quite contrary to Donald Trump. You called him an immoral leader, which, as you know, many of your colleagues in the Christian evangelical faith, they kind of dismiss, not kind of, they did dismiss morality as a prerequisite to leadership as it relates to former President Donald Trump. But there are some things that I will.
Now I'm going to say right there, the point that he makes is true, but I'm going to say the problem, as we will see throughout the exchange, he doesn't give Dr. Baucham a chance to respond, and that's to me a problem.
To discuss with you on the record, let's start with the social justice movement. I believe that church should be a place that expresses and transforms policy because of his value system. What are your thoughts about the Black Lives Matter movement?
Okay, right there, Dr. Richey defines somewhat. He gives this is a good definition of progressive Christianity. But then he jumps to Black Lives Matter. So we're gonna let Dr. Baucham speak for himself, but and Dr. Baucham later will give also a good definition of conservative Christianity in terms of its perspective.
Wow, well, that's two very different things. The Black Lives Matter movement is very anti-church. It's very anti-Christian. It's a Marxist organization that was started explicitly as a Marxist organization that had openly anti-family and openly anti-Christian sentiments. Those sentiments had to be removed from their website because people found out about them. So if you're asking me about faith and Black Lives Matter, I would say that the two are mutually exclusive, especially from a Christian perspective.
Okay, let me put it to you this way, because I think what you're doing is connecting an organizational structure to the movement structure, and here's where I bring them back together. There's a movement to emphasize Black lives, and that doesn't mean those individuals are part of the organization Black Lives Matter, and there are some definite positives that Black Lives Matter. They've been able to work and negotiate with various governments around the country.
You mean in order to enrich themselves personally?
All right, that was kind of an interesting exchange there. Listen, Dr. Baucham, and by the way, if you follow him, you will see that this is the perspective that they give of the Black Lives Matter movement. One of the problems, Dr. Richey somewhat pushed back on that, but he doesn't really give him an opportunity to say, tell me where your information is coming from. And even here, with this sort of dig that they've enriched themselves, okay, let's see how Dr. Richey handles it.
Let's go ahead and get into it, brother, since you posed the question. In Minneapolis, it was actually Black Lives Matter, the organization, who brought the attention to the murder of George Floyd.
Actually, not only the video that did that.
Well, sir, remember,
they didn't do that. The video did that. There was no need for them to do it because the video.
All right, this is sort of, again, it's his view, but it's not. It's a wrong view. Black Lives Matter brought to attention to the world the death of George Floyd. And what I'm going to say is that Dr. Richey, to me, in my opinion, is failing to hold Dr. Baucham to some of these points. Okay.
Give me a moment, brother. If I was a guest on your show, sir, I would be respectful. We only have a certain amount of time. Not only did they bring in the organizers to help with the creation of protests and rallies and marches, they also negotiated with officials, including the mayor of Minneapolis. They're the ones who contacted Benjamin Crump directly. I'm friends with Benjamin Crump. They did something very similar in the city of Atlanta. They negotiated a new plan for policing in the city of Atlanta by meeting with Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms. They did something similar in Miami, LA, and also New York. That was the organization. Now, the organization, they typically would take a step back once the public gets involved, and you saw white women, white men, children, brown folks, black folks all marching in agreement that Black lives should matter. So let's talk about the social justice movement of Black Lives Matter. If Jesus was here, do you think he would say Black Lives Matter?
Okay, again, two things. One, he did a good job of rebuffing, but he didn't, again, hold Dr. Baucham for the statements. Part of the problem with the pushback against Black Lives Matter, against critical race theory, is that people make a bunch of statements that they do not produce facts of. They do not produce their facts. Now, this right here is a critical mistake to me of Dr. Richey. And this is what liberals and progressives do. He's asking now, if Jesus was here, would he say Black Lives Matter? The problem with that is the if part, the speculative part. He's going to lose this point because, first of all, Jesus was not a progressive. And progressives oftentimes rely on emotions and ideology, but not on, okay, what are the facts? When Jesus was here, there were a lot of social issues that Jesus certainly could have involved himself with, those issues of the day, and he did not at all involve himself. In other words, you could have said Samaritan lives matter, poor lives matter, right? The Jewish lives matter. Jesus did not get involved in the politics between Rome and the Jews and the Pharisees and the Sadducees. So this is a straw man that he is providing for Dr. Baucham to tear down easily.
Well, if Jesus was here, he would say lives matter. I know, for example, if Jesus was here, he would say that the black lives that are being obliterated in the womb matter. And as a Christian, I believe that lives matter from the moment of conception all the way to their moment of natural death. Okay. And so I'm absolutely committed to lives mattering, but I will not be held captive by an organization that has used that terminology in order to back people into a corner and cause them to live with this cognitive dissonance between the organization that, again, is antithetical to biblical Christianity and the idea.
I want to just interject right here that Black Lives Matter is not a Christian movement. Was not designed to be a Christian movement. It's not designed to operate in the church. And this is what conservatives do. This is sort of their boogeyman now. It's critical race theory, everything like that. But this is what they're doing now. The problem is that this is not a Christian issue, but they're making it the boogeyman. They're a boogeyman, I should say. But it is not a Christian issue.
That people, regardless of who they are and where they come from, matter. I'm a Christian. I believe people are made in the image of God and have inherent dignity, worth, and value.
Now, one other thing too is that Republicans do not believe in all lives matter. They do not believe in lives that matter from the womb to the grave. And if I was to even argue with that, they really do not care about wombs, lives in the womb. It's political stuff that they care about. Now, my point is, these are the issues that Dr. Richey is failing to bring out here. In other words, if he really wanted to nail Dr. Baucham on some of these things, he could have nailed him, on these points of where the program for the lives once the babies are born. Well, what are you doing for, okay, let's go.
To a statement you made about Jesus would say all lives matter. Remember the parable of the sheep, brother?
Actually, I said Jesus would say lives matter.
Now, he's getting ready to defend the point. I think Dr. Richey is lingering too long on the all lives matter, but he's getting ready to go down again. He's getting ready to give Dr. Baucham another straw man that he is going to so, I think, skillfully tear down. And remember, Dr. Baucham is a pastor. He's a theologian. And you're going to see that Dr. Richey is going to be outgunned in this exchange.
You remember the parable of the sheep?
Listen, you corrected me earlier for interrupting you. I'm going to correct you now for misquoting me. I said, brother, Jesus said lives.
Okay, that's fine. That's a distinction that doesn't make a difference. My question to you was, would he say Black Lives Matter? And you did not agree that he would say Black Lives Matter. That was the genesis of my question. So my second question to you is, do you remember the parable of the sheep?
Yes.
You're a theologian.
Yes.
In that parable, Jesus talks about walking 100 sheep and then one goes astray. The parable goes that the 99 are stopped and attention or emphasis is placed only on the one. While we know through just a sense of humanity that all of the sheep technically matter, it's the sheep that has been put in this ditch that the shepherd stops everything, pauses everything to pay attention to that one. You see, I believe Jesus would have said Black Lives Matter, because if you go to a community, brother, and you're looking at the deprivation in that community, there's an emphasis that needs to be placed on making sure we have economic equity, making sure that we have social access, making sure that we have reforms in policing and criminal justice, because those are the biases that we've been living under. So that would be the sheep in the ditch, brother, and the shepherd would pay attention to that one, as the parable says when Jesus spoke it. You don't agree with that?
Okay, Dr. Baucham is getting ready to obliterate his point, and for good reasons here, because what you just heard was what progressives do. They take a verse of scripture and then they apply it to society, right? And in this case, the social justice context. And that's not what the scripture was meant to do. And there was a lot of ways by Dr. Richey's own applications then that Jesus would have failed. But in all of the ways that Dr. Baucham could have responded, he's going to do this is still great how he responded.
Because you completely misused that text. The parable is one of three parables that were told together: the lost sheep, the lost coin, and the lost son. The emphasis there is on the fact that the Pharisees did not celebrate when individuals came to faith in Christ. So you absolutely obliterated the meaning of that text. The other thing is this. I don't believe that black
wait a minute. You said I obliterated. Wait a minute, Doc. You said I obliterated the meaning of the text.
So you get to finish, but I don't.
Well, I don't have unlimited time with you, brother, and I can't let you just blow me all the time. So you made an accusation.
And
you made an accusation.
You made one, you wouldn't let me get in. I'm saying you misused the text, and you won't let me, your guest.
Well, go ahead and tell me how I misused the text
after you finished.
Go ahead and tell me. You got to be quick though, brother. How did I misuse the text?
You misused the text because.
And at this point, it seems to me, I think Dr. Richey feels like, oh, okay, I stepped in it. And now Dr. Baucham, again, is going to finish his assault right here. So the problem is that Dr. Richey, as a progressive, thinks and assumes, and usually in his audiences. See, in most of his applications, when he is talking about issues of social justice, Black Lives Matter, criminal justice reform, he brings the facts, he brings stats, and he's able to obliterate his guest. He's talking to a pastor now, a theologian in his own right, and then you're going to try to bring the scriptures? Big mistake. Big mistake.
You allegorize the text in order to pour your meaning into it, when Jesus very clearly used that text in order to say something very specific. You don't get to change what he meant by that. What was the
specifics of the text?
The specifics of the text were to rebuke the Pharisees because they were not celebrating when people came to faith in Christ. It didn't have anything to do with economic equity. The economic equity.
Let me give you my understanding of the text.
The talents makes it clear that Jesus was not about economic equity.
Brother, listen to me, brother. Allow me. Okay, I got you. I understand. You noted your rebuttal on the record.
Taking the one talent.
Got you, Doc. I got 3 minutes with you, brother. So here's my understanding of the text.
Okay, now it's kind of funny because Dr. Richey is going to give his response to the text, which is again not going to be 100% right. In other words, he's still going to be kind of wrong. But you have to kind of ask the question, why didn't he give this response in the first place? And again, I think he underestimated who he was talking to.
The text not only was talking about those who are Pharisees, which will be the religious government structure of that time, but the text was also about the judgment that individuals had toward people or toward those who were coming into a new understanding of who God was and who God is to them. Because the Pharisees were judgmental to the believer. Because I don't have unlimited time, let me ask you about the social movement Black Lives Matter again. Do you think the social movement of Black Lives Matter is a bad thing? Or do you think it's a good thing?
No.
Now, there are some things he's getting ready to say and have said that I personally think he should have concentrated on this point. Rather than go down, the issues of the all lives, would Jesus state, if Black Lives Matter, would Jesus say all lives matter? I would have said concentrate on this subject here, in which he's going to run out. Again, my biggest complaint about this is that it's not long enough, because a lot of these issues need to be fleshed out. Now, it's great. It's kind of good that they don't, because Dr. Richey is outgunned here. But he's going to bring up something in just a moment again that if he had not went down this kind of, I'm going to say, nonsense, and concentrate on the question he just asked about social justice, because if he had done his homework and you go back and you look at how does Dr. Baucham respond? Listen to his lectures that he's been doing on some of these issues of critical race theory, Black Lives Matter, and social justice, and then concentrate on those points. He could have obliterated Dr. Baucham, but let's see how he responds.
I think it's a bad thing. I think
Tell me why.
Number one, I think it's dividing people. Let me go back to what you said earlier.
But people are already divided, brother.
Can I? Again, are we going to be equitable, since you're about equity? Can we be equitable in the way that we communicate with one another?
I got 1 minute, man. Go ahead, Doc.
So what I'm saying is, by the way, I love this.
Yeah, it's good.
What I'm saying is that if you go to those cities that you mentioned, yes, BLM got involved in Minneapolis and Atlanta, and the crime rate skyrocketed specifically because of the things that they got involved in.
All right.
Now, that statement is just patently false. And what I'm saying is, because he addressed points that wasn't germane. And again, watch this. He's getting ready to say something else that, again, leave that off and really go back and say, he's going to address it somewhat, but really go back and have him say, where are you getting your stats from? He just made a claim that that crime skyrocketed as a direct result of Black Lives Matter's involvement. Hold him accountable for that.
Have what's called this Ferguson effect. It's absolutely true. Anybody can go and look at this at the crime records before BLM got involved and after.
Okay, all right. I got to come to a close. My producer's giving me the rap sign. But I do want you to remember that in places like Baltimore, where Black Lives Matter had a strong presence as well, crime has actually decreased by double digits. Arrests have decreased by 39%. Incarceration has decreased by 28%. Murder and violent crimes has decreased by 12%. You can go and get those stats. 2 university studies did that. That was based on a coordinated effort between Marilyn Mosby and a reimagined prosecutorial format. And they've been able to decrease crime. Now you talk about the rise in crime. Yes, some of these cities have seen a rise in crime, but you want to blame Black Lives Matter for the rise in crime when you are ignoring the fact that police officers called in with the blue flu, that cops refused to respond to calls, that executives and law enforcement and executives as politicians.
Why should that matter?
Now, great response from Dr. Richey, but because there's no time to flesh that out, and that's what I'm disappointed in. There's no time to flesh that out here, but it's a great response. And again, go back and hold him on the facts of what he's saying. He's getting ready. Dr. Baucham's getting ready to talk about defunding the police, which defund the police in of itself has nothing to do with the rising crime rate.
Because Black Lives Matter wants to defund the police.
Unwilling to actually police.
Black Lives Matter wants to defund the police, so they got
want
exactly
to reprioritize the budget.
No, sir.
Let me give you an idea. Let me give you an idea. Let me give you an idea to consider. And they should defund it.
It's a radical Marxist idea that
but
goes to the heart of the.
Okay, I got to wrap, but think about what you're saying. Places like Ithaca, New York, 51% of the 911 calls did not even require a cop, they required a social worker. So Ithaca, New York decided to respond to their community and start hiring mental health social workers to respond to 911 calls because that is what the community said we actually need. But before I let you go, brother.
Now, Dr. Richey made a great statement. I would have liked him to say, now tell me how you respond to the examples that he gave. But now listen to this question here.
You go around the entire world, literally the whole planet, and you preach what you call to be truth. Do you tell the white evangelicals you preach to they need to get rid of that picture of white Jesus?
I tell them
what the heck does this question have to do with anything? And what I'm saying is that it's time away from points that should have been unpacked and elaborated on. But again, watch how Dr. Baucham obliterates the point.
need to get rid of pictures of Jesus, period, because it's a violation of the second commandment.
When I think Jesus is okay,
a picture of Jesus is a violation of the second commandment. So I don't want to see any pictures of Jesus because it's a violation of the second commandment. It's a graven image.
Tell them to get rid of their white Jesus.
It's a graven image. They need to get rid of it. They shouldn't be pictures of Jesus.
Doc, I got to bring you back on.
All right, I'm going to stop it here because the interview is over. That point was such a kind of again, I don't know what to say about this point here because, like I say, this interview could have been a lot better, and it certainly the last statement. I'm gonna tell you why this last statement was just downright foolish, brother. How many black churches have pictures of white Jesus? And what I'm saying is that you could have unpacked so many other points with Dr. Baucham, because through Dr. Baucham, he represents a white point of view, a white conservatism. And Dr. Richey could have used that opportunity to unpack a lot of the points. So, as I said, if I had to give this debate to anyone, I'm going to give it to Dr. Baucham because he defended his position. There were positions he didn't have to defend because Dr. Richey never called him on the carpet of some of these things. Like I say, I wish this would have went on longer to unpack some of these things. But what do you think? Who do you think won this debate between the two ideologies of conservatism and a progressive Christianity? In this particular case, I call it for Dr. Baucham. All right, look, guys, that is my perspective. Don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to BP, the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you have a thought or comment, add it to the comments section below. All comments are welcome. Till next time, I'll see you then.